Imagine walking through a park on a quiet afternoon when suddenly, dozens of crows descend from the trees and gather in a circle on the ground. They're eerily silent, no cawing, no squabbling over food. They just stand there, surrounding something you can't quite see. You step closer and realize they're all staring at the body of a dead crow. What you've just witnessed is something scientists call a crow funeral, and it's one of the most fascinating behaviors in the entire animal kingdom. Now, before you picture tiny crow-sized coffins and eulogies, let me be clear. These gatherings aren't about grief the way we experience it. What's actually happening is far more impressive and, honestly, a little unsettling. Crows are conducting a threat assessment. They're learning from death itself, and they're doing it with a level of intelligence that rivals some primates. They are treating every death as a crime scene, gathering evidence, identifying suspects, and filing the report away in their remarkable memories. To understand why crows hold funerals, we need to talk about who crows really are. Crows belong to the Corvid family, which includes ravens, jays, and magpies. And corvids are, pound for pound, among the smartest creatures on the planet. Their brain-to-body ratio is enormous for a bird. In fact, it's comparable to that of great apes. They can use tools, solve multi-step puzzles, recognize human faces, and even hold grudges for years. A crow that saw you being mean to another crow 5 years ago will still dive-bomb you today. They remember. Scientists have even documented crows bending wire into hooks to retrieve food from narrow containers, a task that requires planning and an understanding of physics that most animals simply cannot grasp. So when a crow dies, the other crows don't just fly past and forget about it, they notice. And what happens next has been studied extensively by researchers, most notably by Kaeli Swift at the University of Washington. Her groundbreaking work gave us the first scientific window into what these gatherings actually mean. Before her research, most of what we knew about crow funerals came from centuries of folklore and scattered anecdotal reports from birdwatchers who couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. Here's how the experiments worked. Swift and her team would place a dead crow in a neighborhood where crows were known to live. Then they'd watch. Within minutes, nearby crows would begin to alarm call, that harsh, loud cawing you've probably heard before. More crows would arrive, sometimes dozens of them. They'd land in surrounding trees and on rooftops, all focused on the dead bird below. The gathering could last anywhere from a few minutes to over half an hour, and during this time, the crows were remarkably quiet and still. Some researchers have described it as an almost reverent atmosphere, a strange hush falling over birds that are normally among the noisiest in any neighborhood. But the really clever part of the experiment came next. Sometimes, the researchers would stand near the dead crow wearing a specific mask. Other times, they'd stand there without one. What they found was extraordinary. The crows didn't just remember the dead bird, they remembered the person standing near it. Weeks later, crows would mob and scold anyone wearing that same mask, even in a completely different location. They had linked the masked figure to danger, to death. And they shared this information with other crows who hadn't even been at the original scene. In one remarkable case, crows recognized and scolded a masked figure more than 2 years after the initial encounter, demonstrating a long-term memory that most people wouldn't expect from any bird. Think about what that means. Crows are essentially running a neighborhood watch program. When one of them dies, the community gathers not to mourn but to investigate. Who did this? What happened here? Is this area safe? And crucially, they pass that knowledge on to others. It's social learning at an incredibly sophisticated level. Young crows learn from their parents which humans and places to avoid, inheriting a mental map of danger that they never had to experience firsthand. Now you might wonder, do crows actually feel anything when they see a dead companion? This is where it gets complicated. We can't ask a crow how it feels, but brain scans of corvids show activity in regions associated with emotion and memory when they encounter dead members of their species. Their hippocampus and amygdala light up in ways that suggest the experience is genuinely significant to them. Whether that constitutes grief as we understand it is a philosophical question as much as a scientific one. But something is clearly happening beyond cold calculation. There are also behaviors that go beyond simple threat assessment. Crows have been observed gently touching dead companions with their beaks, sometimes even bringing small objects and placing them near the body. In rare cases, crows have been seen attempting to feed a dead crow, as if trying to revive it. These anecdotal observations don't prove emotional mourning, but they complicate the purely rational explanation. Some researchers speculate that crows may experience something closer to confusion or distress, a recognition that something fundamental has changed in their social world that they cannot reverse. Other animals hold similar gatherings. Elephants are famous for visiting the bones of dead relatives, touching them with their trunks, and standing vigil for hours. Dolphins have been seen carrying dead calves for days, refusing to let go. Chimpanzees will sit quietly beside a deceased group member, sometimes grooming the lifeless body. But what makes crows special is the scale and the speed of their response. A single dead crow can attract birds from a wide radius within minutes. Their communication network is astonishingly efficient, faster in some ways than how news travels through a small human town. And that communication network deserves its own spotlight. Crows have distinct vocalizations for different threats. They have one call for a cat, a different one for a hawk, and yet another for a suspicious human. When a crow encounters a dead companion, it uses a specific alarm call that essentially translates to something like "Danger here, come look." The responding crows then make their own assessment and spread the word further. It's a cascading information system, like a social media post going viral, except the stakes are life and death. Researchers have identified at least 20 distinct crow vocalizations, and many believe the actual number could be significantly higher. Each call carries specific meaning, and crows can even adjust their calls based on the urgency of the situation. This intelligence extends into other remarkable behaviors. Crows in Japan have learned to place walnuts on crosswalks so that cars crack them open, then wait for the traffic light to change before safely collecting the meat. Crows in New Caledonia craft hook tools from twigs to extract insects from bark, a skill they teach to their offspring through patient demonstration. Urban crows have figured out which trash collection days to target in different neighborhoods. They adapt, they innovate, and they teach their young everything they know. The funeral behavior is really just one expression of this broader intelligence. When a crow sees death, it doesn't panic. It investigates, learns, and remembers. It catalogs the threat and warns its community. In evolutionary terms, this is an incredibly successful strategy. Crows that learned from the deaths of others survived longer than those that didn't. Over thousands of generations, this behavior became hardwired into their social structure. Today, crows thrive on every continent except Antarctica, living alongside humans in cities, suburbs, and farmland alike, a testament to the power of their collective intelligence. There's something humbling about all of this. We humans like to think of ourselves as uniquely intelligent, uniquely emotional, uniquely aware of death. But here are these birds, with brains the size of a walnut, conducting sophisticated social rituals around their dead, teaching each other about danger, holding grudges against specific human faces for years, and solving problems that would stump a 5-year-old child. The next time you see a group of crows gathered together in unusual silence, pay attention. You might be witnessing one of nature's most remarkable rituals. Those birds aren't just sitting there. They're analyzing, remembering, and communicating. They're doing exactly what their ancestors have done for millions of years, learning from death so that the living can survive. And maybe, just maybe, they're feeling something too. Something we don't quite have the science to measure yet, but something real nonetheless. Because if there's one thing studying crows has taught us, it's that intelligence and emotion show up in the most unexpected places. You don't need a large brain to be brilliant. You don't need language to communicate complex ideas. And apparently, you don't need to be human to hold a funeral. So the next time a crow looks at you a little too long from a telephone wire, remember, it probably recognizes you, it definitely remembers you, and it has almost certainly told all its friends about you. Whether that's comforting or terrifying is entirely up to you.